Bow season is about 2 weeks away here in Missouri, and I cannot be more excited. Now, I probably will be spending most of my hunting time out dove hunting, but you can bet that I am going to be watching the weather looking for a decent drop in temperatures. So I've been prepping my tree stands and going out looking to see which oaks have acorns that are ready to drop. Now I have to be very careful when I'm doing all this stuff because if I go in full bore, I could very easily mess things up. Now, I know we are all excited about being able to get out there and hunt, and it can be very hard to slow down and really think about how we're hunting, whether that's on public or private land. You can very easily blow out your best hunting spots by hunting them wrong and at the wrong time. So in this video, we're going to go over 3 mistakes that hunters make all the time when they're hunting the early season. But before we go over these all too common early season mistakes, do me a favor, and if this is your first time on my channel, hit that subscribe button. Make sure you click that bell icon so you can be notified every time I upload a video. Also, don't forget about the $10 off Tooth of the Arrow Broadheads at that link below. And the first mistake that you are likely to make in the early season is hunting in the mornings. I know the saying is that you can't kill them from the couch, and on the surface that is obvious, but you can certainly save your season by staying in bed. During the early season, deer are on a big food to cover pattern, and a lot of times they could be bedding very close to those food sources. So if you go in there in the dark, stumbling through, trying to get to your tree stands in the mornings, you could at best ruin that hunt and scare them off, or at worst, that buck you've had your eye on all summer that's been shown up on trail cameras, that you're all excited about getting after, he could change core areas. Deer are up early feeding in the mornings before sunrise, and then they're going to head back to bedding. So you have to get up extremely early just so you don't bump them on their commute back from food to bedding. So I don't start hunting the mornings until late October, depending on the weather. It's just so much easier to only hunt the afternoons in the early season when the wind and thermals are so much more predictable, and the deer are bedded down in the woods, and you can slip in more undetected to those food plots and field edges. So there's no reason to be super aggressive in the early season unless you're on some destination hunt that you're not going to be back all season. There is still time left if you're in your private land or public ground that you go to all the time. There is still time left to get after that. Don't just blow out your hunt altogether just because you're too excited to get out there. And the second mistake that you need to avoid in the early season is you're just not taking your scent control serious enough. I'm not suggesting that you are skipping out on washing your clothes and your scent-free detergent or using whatever scent eliminator spray of choice that you happen to have. What I'm saying is that the early season is so much tougher on our scent control than the rest of the season is, or at least most of the time anyway. The early season is typically hot and humid, and I know we do sometimes get higher temperatures, unseasonably high temperatures during the middle and late part of the season, but the combination of high temperatures and high humidity is a scent control killer. Getting to your stand without working up a ton of sweat is extremely difficult in the early season, and that humidity is just going to hold onto our scent and not let it dissipate. That's why wind direction, wind speed, and understanding thermals is critical in the early season. So if you're hunting in the afternoon, which as we've just discussed is what you should be doing in the early season, the humidity is typically lower, so you're going to have less of that humidity to hold onto your scent. And as that air cools as the evening goes on, that air is going to sink down into lower places. So if you're hunting a ridgetop and as the air cools, your scent is going to sink down the hill. Hopefully that is where you want it to go. I firmly believe that in the early season, you should not hunt unless you have wind speeds of 5 miles per hour. More is better up to a certain point anyway. That means that it makes your scent a lot more predictable. So if you're hunting in the early season and there's no or very little wind and humidity is high, your scent is just going to stay there and it's just going to build into a big, stinky human scent bubble. So don't hunt the early season when there is little to no wind, and work to manage how much you sweat as you're getting to your stand. Dress very lightly and walk pretty slowly as you're getting to your stand. Now once you get up there, take some scent elimination wipes and really wipe down your very sweaty areas, especially your armpits and your upper and lower back. And the third early season mistake is you are hunting too close to bedding. And just like hunting in the mornings, hunting over bedding areas is a pre-rut and rut tactic. Now, sometimes you can get away with it in the early season if you've got bulletproof access, but if you're honest with yourself, you probably don't. And while I agree that only hunting food plots and field edges really limits your deer sighting opportunities, but you don't have to go to the opposite end of that spectrum right off the bat. So if you find yourself not seeing much in these fields or food plots during the early season, but you do know where they're most likely bedding, where they're most likely coming from, you can set up on pinch points in between them. Now, I do recommend that you set up on pinch points, closer to the food source side, so you're staying, pretty clear of the bedding areas, and you've got to have good access. A lot of times deer just don't feel comfortable coming out into the open until after dark, and this is especially true in those high hunting pressure areas. A lot of times they're just staging up 20 or 30 or maybe even 50 yards off those edges waiting for the right time to step out. So if you know where they're most likely coming from, or if you don't, try to identify that without spooking them, and then set up on ambush points, pinch points, so you can intercept them coming to and from or in those staging areas. Now, the key is it has to have good entry and exit routes. So that was 3 early season hunting mistakes that you need to avoid so you don't ruin your hunt or the rest of your season. If you have any more early season mistakes that you'd like to share, leave those down in the comments below. Hit that like button if you like this video, share it if you found it helpful, and make sure that you are subscribed so you can stay informed.